Crimson and company ran all the way to the castle, passing through trees, hearing a swoosh as their faces broke the winds in front of them. By sundown, they reached the outskirts of the castle. There was a thick forest surrounding the castle. A lake feeding from a river and some plains separated the forest from the castle. The air was thick and humid, and the lake was swampy. The trees were large. Different types of trees make up the forest with different types of leaves. Some were taller, some were shorter. Some were umbrella-like, some thin, and some were just typical pine trees. Some were shades of purple, some were shades of blue, and some were shades of green. There were all types of insects and animals. Just before they reached the bridge to the castle's entrance, Iconi stopped. "This is as far as I can accompany you, dear friends," she said. "What? You're not coming," cried Crimson. "It is not for the likes of me to partake in the world of political affairs," she replied. "Political affairs?" asked Crimson. "We're trying to save Princess Molly." "You will do a great job, I'm sure," she said. "I thank you for allowing me to join your party. As a token of my appreciation, I will give you one last piece of advice. There is a map inside the castle. Just like the Book of the Mystical Stones, it shows the location of important and valuable items within the castle. It also identifies the chambers within. Your Princess Molly, most likely, will be in the dungeons underneath. Once you finish thine quest, and if you survive, come outside again, I will meet you here. Best of luck." "There's no way we can do this alone without you," Crimson demanded. "Where is this nonsense coming from? Are you upset?" "Who said you were alone?" she asked. "I am not upset. I just can't get involved. But very well then, I will only accompany you then. No fighting for my part." "Gee, thanks," he replied. "You're already involved." "But I haven't fought against Her Majesty yet," said Icones. "Is she your friend?" asked Crimson. "Why do you call her Her Majesty?" "With so much respect." "She is not my enemy," she said with a firm, yet soft voice. "We should have trusted Orion's intuition about this sprite," Mr. Napoleon muttered, disappointed. "We wouldn't have gotten the sapphire stone if it wasn't for her," responded Mrs. Layla. "We didn't even need it. We didn't get the ruby stone." "Are you a spy, sprite?" asked Mr. Napoleon. "No," Icones exclaimed. Crimson, Mr. Napoleon, and Mrs. Layla were speechless. They were shocked by her abrupt, sudden, and cold change. They had failed in getting the ruby stone, and Orion's whereabouts were unknown. They didn't even know if he and his legion were alive. She was their only hope in terms of power and magic. "You're afraid of her. You're afraid of the Mosquito Queen," Crimson concluded. Icones looked down. After a short pause, she talked. "It's just that," she began to explain. "I can't. I'm so sorry. Or rather, I can, but I choose not to. There is an antique custom that we magical creatures live by. Non-interference with the world. We belong to nature, not to the world. We can help if someone is hurt, but nothing more. We are not supposed to hurt anyone, much less for the interests of those in political power. That would just create more chaos." All of a sudden, they saw a silhouette eclipsing the moon. It was a fleet of dragons flying. They all gasped. "Look," said Mrs. Layla. "Some of those dragons look like the one we saw up in the mountains." "No," cried Crimson. "They ate Orion and his legion," he assumed. Inside the castle gates, they were also startled. "Tell Lord Darkshadow there is a fleet of dragons close by," yelled one of the guards. Lord Darkshadow, who was inside the castle, was notified of the dragon. He stepped outside the chamber he was in and began walking through a corridor inside the castle. "Commander Fiamma, are these some of your dragons?" yelled Lord Darkshadow as he walked. Footsteps approached rapidly. Soon, the human-like being with the face of a dragon met Lord Darkshadow in the corridor. "Sire," Commander Fiamma asked, "I was just notified about a fleet of dragons flying on the outskirts of the castle. Is it one of yours?" asked Lord Darkshadow again. "I could only say for sure if I see it," replied Commander Fiamma. "Let us go see it then," instructed Lord Darkshadow. They walked to the castle gate and saw the fleet of dragons. By that time, the dragons were landing where Crimson and company were at. They were behind some trees a few hundred yards from the castle gates. "Quick, hide!" Mr. Napoleon exclaimed. "They're going to eat us." They all began to climb up a tree terrified. "Sir Crimson," exclaimed Orion, who was beginning to come off the dragon. Crimson was confused. He recognized Orion's voice, but he was hiding from the dragons. He didn't even want to look at them. "I think our time has come, my friends. I hear the voice of Orion's ghost calling unto me," said Crimson. "Don't be foolish," Crimson said Orion. "I am not dead. I'm here with the dragons." "Orion," exclaimed Crimson as he finally glanced towards him. "You're with the dragons? How could this be? I can't believe what I'm seeing." Soon, even more dragons reached the spot. "With the emerald stone, we healed some of this dragon's friends that were injured," replied Orion. "As a token of gratitude, they will help us now." "Is that true?" exclaimed Crimson, raising his hands. "There is more power in friendship, in providing service to others, than there is in the mystical stones," said Icones. "A valuable lesson you have learned today, dear Crimson." Crimson shed a tear of happiness as he witnessed this. Meanwhile, voices were heard at a distance from the castle gate. "These are not my dragons, sire," affirmed Commander Fiamma. "Get the army ready," shouted Lord Darkshadow. Fiamma went inside to summon his forces. There was a lot of commotion at the castle gate. They were assembling the army. Crimson drew his sword and began walking towards the castle. "It is time," he said. Orion's army followed. Icones stopped Crimson. "One more thing. Dear, beware of Lord Darkshadow. Never make the mistake of underestimating him. Although he is a powerful sorcerer and magician, his greatest power is his tongue and his mind. Now go, win, and come back. I will await you." "Why can he fight and you can't?" Crimson asked. "It is his choice," responded Icones. Crimson and Orion's forces continued to charge towards the castle. They stopped and glanced at each other. "For Socrates," Orion said. "For Princess Molly," Crimson replied. "For our Stardust Fairy Queen," said Mr. Napoleon. "For love," said Mrs. Layla. "For a wondrous destiny," whispered Icones from a distance. "Best of luck." Crimson raised his sword, let out a war cry, and dashed towards the castle. "Attack," yelled Orion, commanding his forces.